Hello and welcome to this episode of the Business Spotlight. Today we are joined by Don Hampton from Attend to IT. Hi there, Don.
Hiya.
Thanks very much for joining us today.
No problem, no problem.
Excellent. So for those of you joining us for the first time, what's the Business Spotlight? So the Business Spotlight's a place for you to find out a bit more about business, more specifically a bit more about Don's business today. And if you're thinking of getting into business, or if you are already on that entrepreneurship journey, you're in the right place. So Dom, if you can just kick things up for us, please, by letting the audience know who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it for.
Well, I'm Dom, unless I'm in trouble, in which case I'm Dominic. I work for, or I own, Attend to IT with my business partner, Andy. We've been going since 2009, although only very slow beginnings, and the last sort of 10 years taking it a lot more seriously. We've grown to 15 staff now. So having started out of our garage, we're now a fully fledged company. We provide Wi-Fi, CCTV, and anything IT to the events industry. So also TVs and films. So anything that's temporary is kind of our bag. And anything to do with IT. So, as I say, most people know us for our Wi-Fi. CCTV is a fairly obvious one, but we also do kind of a bit of video streaming, bespoke software, and ticket scanning is probably our other kind of main product.
Wow. Well, that's a great array, and thanks for that intro, because that gives us a much better idea of the specifics. And it's often one of the things that I talk to a lot of business owners about, which is, you know, what's your niche, or what's the area of expertise or specialism that you guys have. So, Dom, if I was to say to you, what would you say makes you stand out from anybody else out there doing something similar? What would that be?
I think the biggest thing for us is that we're temporary. 99% of our clients are temporary. There's a couple of farms near us that we do a few favours for that are more permanent installs. But a lot of IT companies will do permanent installations, and in the same way we would never touch a permanent installation other than local farms as favours. We find that the events industry and the temporary industry is very different from what a lot of other companies do. There's probably about 4 other companies in our space that do temporary stuff as well, and they have the same sort of feelings of when you're looking at a more permanent company.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good to know then. So thanks for that share. So with regards to the business journey, you mentioned that you've been running since 2009. So, I mean, first and foremost, congratulations on running a business for that long, because it's a rarity these days. I think they say statistically only about 4% of businesses get to see their 10th birthday. So the fact that your business has been running for what now, 16 years is absolutely fantastic. So if you could just give us, I don't know, like a whistle-stop tour of the business journey so far, where would that go?
So it's an interesting, right at the beginning it was quite interesting. My parents lived in the back of nowhere. I had really bad internet, and they managed to do a deal with a local supplier that if they got 30 houses to get together, they would bring in a big internet connection and distribute it, which is essentially what we now do, just on an event site as opposed to across a village. And my dad was their first customer. So after probably about 6 months, we started reselling their services, just to kind of back garden business, whatever you want to call it, and made a little website, sold a couple of connections to some local businesses. And then out of the blue, a large event rang us and said, we need a temporary internet connection. They completely misunderstood how the website worked, what we sold, absolutely everything. And I just sat on the phone and went, yeah, that sounds really interesting. I had an event background anyway, because that was my day job. And I put the phone down and immediately rang a friend of mine and went, how on earth are we going to do this? And that's how the company was born. That was our first event. We went in my wife's car, because I didn't have a car at the time, loaded it all out the boot, did this event. It went okay. It wasn't brilliant, if I'm honest. We've improved a lot since then. They didn't ask us back. They didn't sue us either, so it couldn't have gone too badly. And so we started with my garage at the time being the warehouse, much to the annoyance of my wife. And maybe after a year, 2 years. One of the companies I did a lot of event work for, a company called Absolute, lovely bunch of guys. They knew I was running out of space and they were moving into a new warehouse, and they said, do you want a corner of the warehouse? And I said, that'd be absolutely lovely. So we did, mates rates, nothing formal. I think there's one sheet of paper that was the contract, which neither of us really kind of paid much attention to. And I think we were there probably for about 4 years until they kind of approached me very sort of politely and went, we'd like you to move out, we've run out of space. And so it took us about 3 months to find the building that we're currently in. When we left, there was about 4 of us, I think, and I turned around to one of the guys on the last truckload delivery and I said, could you just go back, hoover it, make it look wonderful, they've been really nice to us. And they did, they drove back, picked up the last stuff. Unfortunately, they couldn't hoover because Absolute had already loaded a whole load of stuff into our space. They were very nice about it, but they were glad we were gone. And so we moved into Unit 8, which is the unit I'm sat in, and then we next door came up for rent. We moved into 6, expanded into 6, and then the unit on the other side has just come up for rent, and we moved into that last year. So we've probably tripled in size since we got here. So it's been quite a large expansion until obviously COVID, which hit the events industry massively hard. We did do a bit of streaming, a bit of online stuff, but everything stopped. There was a race to the bottom on price. We stood firm, which I think has helped us in the long run. And now the industry is beginning to find its feet again. Last year, or 2 years ago, the industry exploded. Everybody thought it was going to be amazing. And so we did really, really well. Last year, the industry kind of shrunk again because everybody realised that actually there isn't that much money flowing around, and people have got out of the habit of going to festivals and concerts and haven't introduced their younger siblings, friends to the industry to come to concerts. So it has slowed down a bit. Something horrendous, like 53 festivals went bankrupt last year, on top of nightclubs that closed and all the rest of it. But we're looking at a good year. More festivals again, the ones that are still around, and the corporate world is worth opening up again, which is nice. So we're doing quite a fair bit of that as well.
Wow, that's an amazing journey and an amazing story. And I think, yeah, you've mentioned lockdown and COVID, sort of 5-6 years ago now. And it really did, didn't it? It really did hit the event industry like well, not even a baseball bat, but like a 16-wheel truck, just head on. I saw
a post from when it all kicked off the other day, and it from like Facebook memory, and it said, however many years ago it was, and it was me saying, I do love the weekend. It's the only day of the week the phone doesn't ring, an event cancelled. There was just a week where every hour the phone would ring and it would be, our event's cancelled, and it's all, none of its deposits, all of that's gone, and it was pretty horrendous for the whole industry. I mean, for everybody, to be fair, but I think the events industry took a fairly large run.
Yeah, no, you're right. It really did. And yeah, tough times for a lot of people. I know quite a lot of people in the industry. I used to be in it myself, but that's going back probably 10+ years now. So fortunate or unfortunate, depends on how you like to look at things, to get out when I did. So, I mean, you mentioned that there's been a bit of a fluctuation over the last couple of years, sort of like going from strength to sort of like nosediving and then sort of like picking back up again. So, I mean, we've just started into 2025 now, Dom. So what sort of plans have you got for this year, and what sort of challenges do you think you might face?
This year, we've got quite a lot of repeat custom, which is good for those companies that are still around. Nothing really out of the ordinary, to be honest. Business as usual. I'm trying to think, really. It's not something that we plan particularly. I suppose we are in the planning stage at the moment, so the events are beginning to come in. We've had quite a lot from some of the big festival companies. I think one of the hardest things for us is our industry, to talk about it, I should say, is our industry, a huge amount of it's under NDA. The festivals and stuff we can talk about, there's a huge amount of corporate stuff that we do that's really cool and really exciting, and you can't talk about it. And it's more frustrating because they kind of say to you while you're in the quoting stage, have you ever done anything like this before? And you go, well, I can't tell you about it because companies like you don't let us, which is rather unfortunate. So yeah, we've got quite a lot going on. In terms of festivals, nothing's really confirmed yet, but it's all repeat business, so we know it will do.
Yeah.
And in terms of challenges, I suppose it's the same as always. Is everyone confirms last minute? I think for us, accommodation is always one of the hardest things we do because we tend to get confirmed after the tickets have gone on sale. So we then go and try and find accommodation near the festival site, and of course it's all ridiculously priced because everyone knows. Every so often we'll get a client come to us and go, we haven't released the dates yet, but would you like to come and do this show? At which point we book the accommodation as fast as we can.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, and yeah, a great insight as well. So I'm sure that's going to resonate with a lot of the other business owners, especially those that are in the industry as well. So thanks for that. So Dom, moving on to yourself then as the business owner, what would you say, and it's probably difficult because you've been running the business for quite a few years now, but what would you say has been one of the biggest lessons that you've learned today from running the business?
Since I've started, be nice to everybody. I think you never know when somebody's going to move company and become a decision maker that you never thought they could be. I have a fairly, when I was at university, we had a technical unit that we worked in after lectures. Paid very little, paid awful actually, but the manager was always very nice to the staff, always gave, we had beer vouchers that we could spend. We could, you know, if I wanted to get 3 of my mates into one of the nightclubs where we were working, he would always do it. And that's where I learned that being nice to people is worth more than money. He could give me beer vouchers worth £5, and I would consider them sort of mentally that's £15 worth of stuff he's given me. You know, I think we got paid £25 a night to work at a nightclub, and if he didn't have any money, he'd probably give us £10 worth of beer vouchers, and we'd still work that night. It's costing less money, but we'd still work for it and be happy. And I think I brought that out into business. I should point out I don't pay my staff £25 a day, but there's a certain amount of, if you look after your staff. We have one of our staff unfortunately left to go to another a permanent IT company because he didn't want to go on site so much. And when they do go on site, they have to eat in the hotel that they stay in, and the PDs are set at 1 drink a night. And I just go with our guys, it's just like, well, go where you want, as long as you're not going to go somewhere that's ridiculously expensive. If you're in London, it's going to be more money than if you're in York. And simple things like that, when I do meet up with this ex-employee, that's all he moans about, is I was in Southampton the other week and I could barely afford my food. And you're thinking, well, that's ridiculous. Whereas my guys can essentially do what they want as long as they can justify it. And I think that to me is a huge lesson, because you get a lot more value out of a member of staff who's motivated and empowered than if you force them into a whole load of criteria of what they can and can't do.
Yeah, I think that's key. I think it's so important, and you've kind of nudged my memory. I think there's a couple of things that you've mentioned, and you know, I'm sure it's going to resonate with a lot of the audience. But Dom, you mentioned, I think earlier on in the podcast, you mentioned something around just agreeing to do something and not really having a clue how you was going to do it, but you was going to figure out a way. And then there, you've just mentioned another thing about looking after your team. And it really reminds me, I don't know which book it came from, but it was one of Richard Branson's books where he wrote about, you know, if you're being asked to do something you're not quite sure how to do, just say yes and figure the way out, which you've obviously mentioned. And he also, I think, quite famously quoted, train your staff well enough so that they can leave, but treat them good enough so that they stay.
Yeah.
And
I've read that book. I can't remember which one it was. I don't read a lot, and that I've certainly heard that, and I would imagine John, who was the manager when I was at university, lived by that rule as well. And I'm so glad he taught me that, because it's a nice, I mean, it's that cliche, don't find a job you enjoy and you won't work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And not only do I want that, but I want that for my staff, is that we quite often have very last minute events come in and last minute demands from our clients. And I don't want to ring my staff at 8 o'clock at night and go, I really need help, but they'll always answer the phone. Well, 9 times out of 10, they'll answer the phone, unless they're doing something really important. And that to me is really important. And it's funny because I look on LinkedIn and you see these people moaning that's kind of like, my boss phoned me at this time, it's outrageous because my day finishes at 5. And in theory, yes, it should. But certainly the events industry isn't one where that's true. And because of that, we have to reward our staff in other ways. I expect is probably too strong a word, but I would like to be able to ring my staff if a client is forcing me to, if something's going horribly wrong, if a client suddenly needs something very urgently, and I would like my staff to be able to answer. But they'll only do that if you're sensible with them and empowered with them, and let them kind of do their own thing.
Yeah, I think that's key. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. You know, you've got to obviously treat your staff well enough so that they feel that answering a phone call out of those hours. And like you say, I think within the events industry, it's kind of a par for the course anyway. But certainly looking after your staff will enable them to sort of feel empowered to be able to make that decision to answer the phone or not, right?
Very, very, very important. I think one of the things that I struggle with, and it's probably fresh in my mind because I struggled with it this morning, is we've just lost a job because of, I'm sure there's a technical term, but line iteming. So the end client has gone, if they go with us, overall, the job will make more money. However, this particular line item will shoot up, it'll go up 3-4 times because of the way we charge. But overall, the job makes makes more money. But they've not been allowed to use us by a higher up because their policy is every line item has to make a profit. And to me, that's almost a way that you treat your staff, is that if I line item everything, if I look at a member of staff and go, well, if I buy them this beer for £10, I'm going to lose money. You go, no, I want to empower this member of staff. I want to motivate them. As long as all the money I spend on this member of staff, wages, extra stuff, looking after them, all the rest of it, as long as that makes me more money than I'm spending on them, then it doesn't matter whether it goes on their wage, whether it goes on buying them a present, or whatever. And I think far too many people will sort of itemise what they're looking at in too much of a detail.
Yeah.
Maybe we're too laid back, but it works for me.
Yeah, and well, clearly it does work because you mentioned you've been running the business since 2009. So keep doing what you're doing there, Dom. So thanks for that. So on the business, I mean, one of the things I often like to ask business owners is if you was able, I mean, if we were able to jump in a time machine and travel back in time, Dom, and go and visit an 18-year-old Dom, and you get to have all the knowledge that you've got now, and you get to give one piece, just one golden nugget to a younger version or an 18-year-old version of you, what would that advice be?
Quit jobs you don't like sooner. When I was younger, I think I've had 4 proper jobs, not including what I'm doing at the moment, although I don't consider that a proper job. And after the 3rd one, I was chatting to my wife and going, I hate my manager. Again, it's a manager I don't like, a manager I don't get on with. And I remember sort of having a chat with her at dinner, and she was kind of like, there's a common theme here, and it's you. It's not your managers. And I think I stuck in some jobs that I should have left earlier. They were great stepping stones. I learned a lot in all of them, to be fair. I shouldn't be too nasty about my last jobs. But I think all of them I hung on for too long. And when I did leave, I was a bit bitter about them and held it against the company. So, yeah, I think the moment you're not happy at something, move on, do something else.
Yeah, I think that's some really sound advice. And whilst I haven't got a time machine, unfortunately, I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of viewers and listeners that are of a younger age, and that's some really sound advice. Great share again. Thanks, Dom. So, you know, what you do, I mean, the events industry, as I mentioned earlier, I've had a sort of a taster of it myself, and it's quite tough going. So I mean, for you to have done what you've done over the last 16 years, I mean, it's going to take some serious grit and determination. So what is it, Dom, that, you know, puts that fire in your belly or gives you that inspiration to continue to do what you do day in, day out?
I think watching what you achieve. We did Pride for the first time, well, it must be 3 years before the pandemic, Brighton Pride. And I think where we work from there is a balcony that overlooks the stage and overlooks the whole crowd. And the second year we did it, we did the ticket scanning as well. And everyone was in. We basically finished, I think it was the main act's last 2 songs, at which point our kind of job is done. As long as nothing breaks, we'll be fine. And it's that moment then when you're looking over these sea of people who are all enjoying themselves, all having the time of your life. And we've played a small part in that. And the buzz I get from that is incredible, and just kind of looking at that. And it's a great picture I've got of that. And I just love it. It's one of my favourite. And when we go back and do Pride, I love standing on that balcony and reliving that moment every year. It's not as good as it was the first year. That was a real buzz. But I think that's the thing for me is being thrown a whole load of problems, solving them, and then watching your work.
Yeah, I think that's so key. And I think you did allude to it earlier is, you know, find something you love doing and you won't work another day in your life. And it clearly sounds like you have found something that you love doing, Dom.
Yeah, I mean, there are times I absolutely hate it. There are normally sort of 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm still going. There's a lot of stress. It's one of those industries that the show will start whether you're ready or not. There is no movable deadline. Something that we really struggle to impress on suppliers, especially Openreach, who will install stuff late. And you sort of have to phone them and go, if you don't install it by Monday, you might as well not bother. And you get a poor person on the other end of the phone who says, well, there's no need to be rude. I'm not being rude. If you don't install it by Monday, you really might as well not bother. It's a fact. And that side of it is the side that I love, is the immovable deadlines and the immovable end, because the event will end at that time, whether you've even got ready or not. So it's quite nice that once the event's finished, it's done and dusted, and you don't need to worry about it again until the following year.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. No, that's another great share. Thanks for that, Dom. So, I mean, it's been great chatting to you on the podcast, Dom, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners are definitely going to want to find out more about you and more about your business. So what's going to be the best way for them to do that?
We've got quite a large website that explains a lot of our services. Obviously, being an IT company, which is very seasonal. When we have downtime, the guys twiddle their thumbs and I don't let them. So the website gets quite a lot of attention during the winter. So yeah, attentoit.co.uk is a good place to start. We're always quite happy to talk to potential customers and customers who are just not sure whether they may or may not be potential customers, because the earlier people speak to us, the easier it is for us to help them. And we like giving advice. I like chatting to people and helping them. So yeah, by all means, just get in contact.
Fantastic. Well, Dom, as I say, thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the Business Spotlight.
No, it's been nice. Thanks.
And for all of our viewers and audience out there, thank you very much for joining us today. That is a wrap. That is a close off for this episode of the Business Spotlight. Take care. See you all soon.